Shreveport approach, Centurion 6048 November. On station, going to do a photo mission about 10 nautical miles southwest of Spring Hill for a few minutes.
Hello fellow aviators, Matt Farrell, the Flying Salesman. Welcome back to the cockpit of the 210. For those of you who don't know, I have an awesome job. I work for a great company out of Wichita, Kansas called Aeromach, and I get to fly this airplane around and talk to our customers. We got an exciting flight for you today. We're going to blast off out of Shreveport and we're going to go on a sightseeing trip. This is something that I've referenced in other videos, and I've had a couple of you reach out and ask very specific questions about how we do this. So we're going to fly up just north of Shreveport. We're going to go up to a recreational property, a deer hunting property that we have up north of here, and we're going to fly around that and show you guys how to safely do that in an airplane and be able to observe the property from the air. Some people call this a photo mission. That's how I reference it, and that's what the terminology we're going to use with ATC is we're going to call it a photo mission. And the reason why I do that is because that's something that ATC is used to. There's a lot of survey companies that do these. There's a lot of companies for hire that does this, and so they are familiar. If you tell them you're on a photo mission, that usually means you're going to fly a pattern. Either you're going to fly a back and forth pattern consistently, or you're going to do turns around a point. There's some things that we need to take into consideration when we do a flight like this. Where we're at, the proximity to airports, how we're going to get there into that area and out of that area. Where we're going today is northeast of here. It's going to be about 10 nautical miles from the Spring Hill Airport. And where we're going to go is near this Ivan Lake. And it's right here by this big nomenclature. It says we need to contact Shreveport Approach Control within 20 nautical miles. Just outside of the terminal area, that was where we're going to be maneuvering. So we're going to take VFR flight following up there, and most likely they're going to drop us off and we're going to be ONAV once we get up there. But we'll work through that once we get on station and start our turns. And then we'll have to talk about how we're going to pick up our clearance to get back into the Shreveport downtown. So oftentimes, because of the altitudes that you're going to want to do your flight at, it's going to be below any radar coverage. So you're going to have to get out of that coverage and then know how to get back into it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get up in the airplane. Some things that we need to take into consideration on this flight. FAR 91-119 is your FAR regulations that stipulate the altitudes that you must maintain from any person, property, or vessel. So in congested areas, it stipulates that we have to stay 1,000 feet from any person, obstacle, or let me say that differently. It's very explicit. It's 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle in that area. So if you get to your destination and there's a 1,000-foot tower, you've got to be 1,000 feet above that tower. So be cognizant of that. It's not 1,000 feet off the ground, it's the highest obstacle in that area. I'm going to leave that up to you to determine what the area is, but you need to be careful of where we're flying and the altitudes that we operate at. It goes on to say that if you're in a sparse area, you can go down to 500 feet, and if you're in a very remote area, you have to stay 500 feet from any person, object, or structure. So, and it is worth saying that in the regards to the altitude for a congested area, we must stay 2,000 feet horizontally away from anything. So that comes into play also if you're going to do circles or a photo mission over a congested area. That's something to consider. Another thing we need to touch base on is Advisory Circular 9136D. Now, it's an advisory circular. This is not a regulation. This is something that the FAA has put together as a set of recommendations, and it's something that we need to pay attention to. 9136D states that if you're going to fly over any areas of worship, maybe it's a historical site, maybe it's areas that are known for peace and quiet. In our case, we're going to be near a wildlife management area, and it explicitly names areas of wildlife up there. And they want you to, they recommend you stay 2,000 feet above any of those areas. So that's the guidance that we're going to use on this flight today. So for the sake of ease, my altitude is going to be 2,500 feet. That's going to keep me in the VFR pattern altitude. We're going to be in close proximity to this Spring Hill Airport, 10 nautical miles away, so we're going to be listening to that traffic, common traffic advisory frequency, so that we know that there's any aircraft coming in and out of Spring Hill. That's going to be important to know. And then that altitude of that airport is 218 feet MSL. So when we have altimeter set, we've got to stay above 2,218 feet, so that 2,500 feet is a nice round number for that. That's how we're going to get up to this area. I pick an airport that is close to the area that I want to do the photo mission at, and that's what I flight plan. So when we blast off out of here, I'm going to tell them I'm going up towards Spring Hill. Our air traffic control in this area, they're familiar with the airports around, and they're going to know the direction I'm heading. So the way we're going to get this started, we're going to go to ForeFlight, and we're going to put in Kilo Delta Tango November, and if I'm not mistaken, Spring Hill is Kilo Sierra Papa Hotel. 31 nautical miles, that's correct. So that gives me a course line. You guys are familiar with this. We go to flight plan, we go send to flights. You've got those exclamation points up there because it's telling you that the cruise altitude that I have set is too high. Right now it's set at 3,000. We're going to tell them we're going to go up at 2,500 feet, and that's where we're going to make our photo mission at. We want to go get our briefing for today. We already know it's a beautiful, clear day. You don't have to be very observant to understand that we have very nice, clear skies, but you never know what's going to go on. So we do have some closed or unsafe NOTAMs. The first thing that comes up is 1432 is closed here at Shreveport downtown. They're in the process of remarking our new runway. Hopefully they'll have that finished up here pretty quick. And the same thing with Spring Hill Airport, it is closed. So even though we're going up there, we will not be able to land at the Spring Hill Airport. But that's okay because we're not planning to land down there anyway. There are some air mets for IFR south of us, but that's not anything we're going to be concerned with today. An air met for turbulence up high, and our synopsis looks like there's a little bit of a cold front blowing in from the northwest, but it's not going to affect us. We're going to be up for less than an hour, and this flight is not going to be anything that's going to be impacted by any frontal boundaries. METARs, everything is going to be in the green. So the only other thing we need to do is we need to go and check our NOTAMs. Now we know that the runway is closed here. I'm not going to worry about the winds aloft. We're not going to be high enough really for that to matter, and it's not really going to impact our flight, other than, if you recall, your winds aloft will impact your turns around a point. So keep that in mind when you're trying to keep what you're looking at in the window so you can see it. Departure NOTAMs, there are few obstruction NOTAMs. All of them are pretty far away and pretty low. Like one's is they're showing it's a pole and it's 163 feet. That's not going to affect us as we get in close to the airport. The runway is everything about 14 and 32, either closed or non-standard markings. FDC NOTAMs we are not going to need today. Destination NOTAMs, again, it's going to tell you that the runway is closed and the airport is closed. They only have one runway there, but again, we're not landing there. We're just using that as a closest place to where we want to go. So that's our pre-flight briefing. You guys wait just a second. We're going to fire up the airplane and we're going to go do this flight. Stand by.
And just like that, we're back. We are letting the airplane warm up. Our oil temperature's up to 90 degrees. We do have a little bit of a taxi, so I expect it to be right in that 125. So we're going to go ahead and make our radio call to downtown ground.
309, roger. Turn right
with them
about
on
10
getting
degrees.
that clearance to where we want to go. Remember, we're going up towards the Spring Hill Airport, and we're just going to tell them we're going to do a photo mission about 10 nautical miles southwest of Spring Hill. But giving them that airport gives them an area to know and understand where we're going to go. And we're going to request VFR flight following. Downtown ground, Centurion 6048 November.
Centurion 6048 November, downtown ground, wind 170 at 11, gust 17, I'll turn 2996.
2996 for 604 November on taxiway Golf. Request VFR flight following up towards Spring Hill. I left out the photo mission because it seems like he's in a little bit of
Centurion 48 November, departure frequency 119.9, squawk 0433.
0433 and 119.9 for 6048 November. Ready, taxi when you are.
48 November, runway 23, taxi via November Echo.
November Echo for 48 November.
Air 309, you got downtown in sight now? I see you turning about a good square base.
I know you guys remember this, but when we're doing our wind correction, gusting to 17, we're going to climb into the wind and dive away from the wind. The wind's coming from our left right now. Headwind to the left. We make this left turn. We're going to transition these ailerons to the right side. Now we're climbing into the wind that's quartering from the right. Head on from the right. As we make this left-hand turn, now we're going to be going downwind and we're going to have to dive away from the wind. Make that transition. We're going to get down here, we're going to do our run-up, and I'll see you guys in the air on takeoff in just a second. Downtown Tower Centurion 604 November is ready to go 23 to Echo 1.
Centurion 6048 November, downtown tower, turn right heading 320, runway 23, cliff takeoff, wind 200 at 10, gust 17.
Clear for takeoff 23, right turn 320 for 6048 November.
Approaching runway 23. Entered runway 23.
Going to keep that crosswind correction in.
Remaining.
We're going to have a crosswind from the left.
Centurion 48 November, you can turn right on course.
Right on course for 6048 November. Come to a complete stop. 30 inches of manifold pressure. Let that turbo lag. Red line, red line. 70 knots and rotate. Got that crosswind correction in there. Positive rate, gears coming up. And we're accelerating.
Downtown Tower says an 84309 is holding short of runway 23, ready to take off for El Dorado.
Flaps are coming up.
Centurion 48 November, contact Shreveport departure.
48 November starting the turn, we'll go to departure. Have a good day. We'll see you in a bit. Shreveport departure Centurion 604 November 1000, climbing 2500, turning on course for Spring Hill.
Centurion 6048 November, Shreveport departure, radar contact, Shreveport altimeter 2994.
9994, 48 November. Alright, 30 inches of manifold pressure, 2500 RPM. Gear up, flaps up.
Centurion 48 November, you can contact Shreveport approach on 118.6.
118.6 for 48 November. Shreveport departure Centurion 6048 November is with you, 118.6.
Centurion 6048 November, Shreveport approach, roger.
Shreveport approach, excuse me. Like I said, we're going to climb up to 2,500 for this photo mission. We'll set that on our altitude mode. Going to keep an eye on ADS-B. Now, ADS-B is not a catch-all. You got to remember, not every aircraft is required to have ADS-B based on the airspace that it's flying in. So when you're down here doing these photo missions inside a controlled airspace, you never know what you're going to encounter. Maybe an aircraft, could be a drone. You just don't know in this day and age. Nice bumps up here today. I would recommend you pick a better day than a day like today. Midday, blue clear skies with gusty winds. Going to be a little rough. That said, it's a great day to practice our crosswind landings. Coming up on 2,500 feet. Start that level off. Now, one thing you need to remember, we're doing a photo mission. It's sightseeing. So we don't need cruise power as though we were on a cross country with a destination in mind. So we can pull that power back and enjoy a little bit slower ride. We're going to do a course leaning for this flight. Now this is where me knowing my airplane and having flown it for as long as I have comes into play. So I kind of understand what my power settings should be and about what my fuel flow is. So I'm using those rough course estimates for my settings for this flight. 2,500 feet, I'm not going to go through a full leaning exercise. Depending on your aircraft and your configuration,
you can turn right on course.
You might want to have 10 degrees of flaps. For the sake of this mission, I'm just going to have the power pulled back. The 210 does better. It flies cooler, I should say. It can fly slower with your gear and flaps down, that's for sure. But it flies cooler when it's in the clean configuration and the power pulled back. So that's what the configuration is that we're going to use. We're flying this course line. We're going to get up here to Ivan Lake. And the property is just south of Ivan Lake. The other thing we want to do is we want to monitor that closest airport, which is Spring Hill on 122.8. So you can see on our sectional, we're coming up on Ivan Lake. I can see it outside. Like I said, I know that this property is south of Ivan Lake, so I'm going to go past it and make a right-hand turn. If you have an autopilot and you're doing these types of missions, I do recommend you use it. So we're going to go ahead and hit heading mode. Heading. And hit altitude hold. And we're going to start that right turn.
I would take him.
Shreveport approach, Centurion 6048 November. On station, going to do a photo mission about 10 nautical miles southwest of Spring Hill for a few minutes.
Centurion 48 November, Roger, radio service terminated, squawk ForeFlight to change preview. Got no traffic between you and the Spring Hill Airport. And no traffic up in that area either.
48 November, Roger, frequency change approved. I'll squawk VFR and give you a call when I'm ready to come back inbound. Thank you.
48 November, Roger, have a good one.
So just like that, now we're squawking 1200. I'm monitoring that closest airport, and I'm going to keep Shreveport approach dialed in as well. I'll give you guys a photo of the property that we're looking at. I'm going to go ahead and share with you guys right now. This is probably, I'm not going to say it's the worst day to do a sightseeing flight, but we're getting bounced around pretty good. Definitely making it difficult to enjoy seeing what you see outside. I've got about 23 inches of manifold pressure, 2,400 RPM. I want to talk to you a little bit about safe altitudes. I started the video in the cockpit and we talked about complying with the FARs. 91119, Advisory Circular 9136D. It's very important that you pay attention to those regulations and you adhere to those regulations. You know, me being in the industry, I get to go to a lot of events and talk to a lot of different people and pilots. I get to speak with the FAA. And in the winter time, where we are right now, January, February, we do a lot of the State Association Agricultural Aerial Applicator shows, the crop dusters. So we get to talk to a lot of those guys, understand what they're doing. We sell products to them, things that they need in their operation. And one of the things that I'm so surprised by is the topics of discussion between operators and the FAA. They're actually giving seminars on this and reminding operators of these regulations. The non-flying public are placing more and more complaints. They're going to snap a picture of your aircraft. It's going to have your tail number on it. And the FAA is going to have to follow up on that complaint. They have to follow up on every complaint they receive. So if you're not adhering to these regulations on a sightseeing mission like this, you're going to find yourself talking to the FAA and explaining why you were doing what you were doing. The area that I'm flying over is not a wildlife management area, but it is adjacent to that wildlife management area. So that's why I'm paying close attention, and that's why I'm maintaining 2,000 feet above the ground, is because in my orbits, I am most likely going over that wildlife management area. You can see it depicted with the hash marks. It kind of looks like a swamp. They don't really call it out, but because I'm familiar with the area, it's my responsibility to know where I'm at and what I'm over flying. So make sure that if you're going to do a sightseeing trip, a photo mission, that you're complying with the aviation regulations like we're supposed to. Keeping an eye on ADSB. We've got an aircraft out there about 900 feet above us. Right now they are 6 nautical miles away, so not in our immediate area. Looks like they're on a cross country with a destination in mind, but something we need to keep checking that not only outside, but keep checking inside. Make sure nothing's sneaking up on us. Make sure they don't make any turns that we need to be aware of. Now that we've concluded our photo mission, we're going to go back to our flight plan.
November 84309, no traffic there between you and the El Dorado Airport. Radar service terminated, squawk VFR, frequency change approved. Have a good one.
I'm going to touch
Radar service terminated.
my departure airport because it's in that flight plan, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the direct to button. And it's going to tell me, do you want to go straight to direct downtown? And I do want to go direct downtown, so we're going to hit activate. We're going to turn left on course, proceed inbound,
5904 Juliet, 2000, climb to 3000.
give Shreveport approach a call. We're going inbound, so we need to go ahead and get the ASOS again. In the event that it's changed, 118.65.
Turn right on course, everybody do that.
Shreveport, downtown airport, Shreveport, Louisiana. Automated weather observation 1844 Zulu. Wind 160 at 08. Visibility 10. Sky condition clear. Temperature 20 Celsius. Dew point 12 Celsius. Altimeter 2994. Remarks. Density altitude 800.
All right, so we're going to have a crosswind landing from the left, just like when we took off. Get on our transmit frequency for Shreveport approach. Shreveport approach, Centurion 6048 November. 10 to the southwest of Spring Hill, inbound for downtown. I have the numbers.
Centurion 48 November, downtown landing runway 23, standby for squawk. Shreveport altimeter 2993.
2993, 48 November. I'll give it a little more power.
Centurion 48 November, squawk 0430.
0430 for 604 November.
Strip 48 November, your radar contact 15 miles northeast of the downtown airport. Landing runway 23. I show you at 2,500 feet currently.
That's affirmative. 2,500. We'll expect 23 for 604 November. We're going to get a little bit closer in, and I'll go ahead and give it 10 degrees of flaps to help us with that descent. We're already well below flap extension speed. That's good. Again, got our ADS-B up and running. There's an aircraft coming out. You can see it there on the screen. 504 Juliet. Or excuse me, 5904 Juliet. 1,100 feet above us and climbing. So that's good. I doubt you can make it out, but I can see the airport out there. Going to go ahead and get 10 degrees of flaps in. Go ahead and start that descent. And that'll help us with some visual separation from that traffic that's 12 o'clock. And I've got them inside out there. So just to give you guys a little bit of a checklist, if you're going to do a sightseeing flight, double check your altitudes, double check the area you're in, be cognizant of any of those special use areas where you might need to apply that advisory circular. Make sure you're in compliance with the FARs and monitor all the frequencies that you have available to you for the traffic in that area, whether it be close to an airport or for traffic control.
Centurion 48 November, contact downtown tower 120.22.
4 November, going to tower. Y'all have a great day. Downtown tower, Centurion 6048 November is inbound 23 for downtown.
Centurion 6048 November, downtown tower, straight in for 23, runway 23, clear land, wind 170 at 9er, or correction, 170 at 8.
All right, clear to land 23, straight in for 604 November.
Number 2, Julie, Kilo, A firm, runway 23, taxi via Echo, cross runway 32.
What we can do now, we can go to procedure, approach, and go visual 2-3, load approach and activate, and we'll go back to the map. That'll give us vertical and horizontal guidance. We're below the glide slope right now, so what we're going to do, we're going to cut the corner just a little bit. We're going to raise the nose. I got my hand down here on the trim wheel, adding just a little bit of up trim. It's going to help us bleed off airspeed. We're already below gear extension speed, but the slower we get it to operate that gear, the better it is for the gear. There's glide slope. It's coming in. We're just about to capture it. Go ahead and drop that gear. I got a wheel, and I got a green. Right on glide path. Ease that power out. Ooh, let that nose fall a little bit too much. I didn't have the trim set just right. But now we're back on glide path. Got about that 500-600 feet per minute is what we're looking for. Still pulling that power back. That was 21 inches. Now we're at 20 inches. Doing 125 knots right now. Just letting the airplane slow down gradually. We're a little bit below glide slope, so we can raise that nose. And that's going to allow that airspeed to bleed off even more. About another inch of power out. When you're shooting instrument approaches...
Mile final runway 23.
Thank you, Gladys. Our final approach power setting is about 17 inches of manifold pressure, so we're just easing it down to that 17 inches. If you can see it in the camera there, I've got a wind correction angle set up to fly right down the center line of the runway. My nose is pointed off to the left into the wind. The rudder's centered right now. The ball is centered. And I've just got the nose turned into the wind to track straight down the track of final.
500.
Thank you, Gladys. Now we're getting it below 115 knots, which is where we've got to be to add the last 2 notches of flaps. So there's 20, and there's 30. Got a big balloon effect there, that's all right. We're at 100 knots. We're going to expect a little gust. So I'm a little bit faster than I normally be. I'm about 95, but I do have to be at that 80 knots when I come over the runway. So I'm going to start pulling that power back. Power's all the way out. Letting that airspeed bleed off. Didn't even feel the wheels touch. Now watch my yoke turning into the wind. I'm slowing it down, turning that yoke into the wind.
Sierra 48 November, going back to park on Gulf Road.
That's affirmative for 48 November. Like Echo Romeo, please.
Sierra 48 November, roger. Turn right at Foxtrot. Echo Romeo to park, cross runway 32.
All right, Foxtrot Echo Romeo to park, and 48 November is clear across 32.
Entered runway 1432.
Now that we're clear of all active taxiways, I want to share a little bit of tip with you. One of the things I was doing on that landing is I was looking down the runway. I was talking to you guys, but my eyeballs were about 300 or 400 yards down the runway on the center line. Put your focus down the runway, and that way you can tell if the airplane starts drifting, and you can make those corrections. Remember, we're the pilot in command, and we have to command the aircraft and make sure we get it back on track. Something else that I want to remind you guys, and when you're landing in a crosswind, just like I demonstrated when I was landing, go ahead and start rolling in that crosswind correction, and that way you're going to fly the airplane to a stop. Just because your wheels touch the ground does not mean the airplane has quit flying. So roll that correction angle in, keep the airplane flying, and make sure that you fly it to a stop. Same thing with taxiing in. We're still operating this airplane. We're still pilot in command and responsible for what's going on. I appreciate you guys coming along. It's great to have you part of the community, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.